Hey guys, what's up? It's La coming back to ya with another episode of Car Rides with La. And today, I don't really have too much too much to say today. And today, I don't really have too much to say. No, that's not true. I was recently thinking about it because this is a thing that I know about myself that I've thought of a lot before, and it's how it's always been relatively difficult for me to deal with procrastinating and being able to take breaks the more I got older. The older I got. I don't know how you would say that. Would you say the more I got? I think it would. You would be saying, yeah. I don't. I think, yeah. My fault. Anyways, the older I got, it became more and more of a pain to exist because my ability to act on what my brain was telling me just kept getting more and more difficult. And I've actually thought about this a good amount before now. And it's interesting that just now in this moment, it's actually coming to me a little bit clearer. You know, when you think about how most people live, they don't live the way I do, where they're thinking about all these different parameters and time management and what should be done at what time and what shouldn't be done when. Like, this is how people live. No, I mean, that's not how people live. This is how people live now. Um, so that's not even how people live. And the way my brain deals with all of these things, it is incredibly foreign to how most humans are going to interpret these types of situations. It's not how most people interpret the situations. And so I don't know that many people have been able to give me much advice on the topic because it's just not something that their brain does to them or something that they have to deal with. I think in a lot of ways this has been more of a modern phenomena. Sorry, I'm just remembering what one of my dreams was, so I wanted to talk about it. It was a really weird situation because I guess my car was getting an oil change done, and for some reason, I dropped it off before coming to work, which wouldn't even make sense because usually I would drop it off when I came home from work. That's like typically when I would drop my car off, would be on the way back from work. I've never been to work and then needed a ride home. So that's never happened before. But in the dream, I guess that's how it was presented, is that I was at work, but I needed a ride home. And this guy that I don't even ever talk to, I never even talked to him. I just like got in his car and sat in his car, and then when he came in to his car, he just I was just like, "Oh, can you give me a ride home?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, sure. I think where you live it's on the way." It's on the way. And I was like, "Okay." I'm not sure. I mean, I was a little bit nervous about doing it and asking him, but for some reason, again, this whole situation worked out. Because that is not how it would work in real life. Obviously, you couldn't just get in a person's car and just like, oh yeah, hey, by the way. But then what was weird is we didn't end up dropping me off on the way home. We ended up at his house, and he was kind of acting like a child, which was a little bit weird because this guy is like an adult and he has a family. Like it's not, but he was with someone he referred to as his aunt, and his aunt was kind of like telling him to do stuff, maybe like chore related activities, and he didn't really feel like he was acting like a bratty teenager. He was not acting like this guy is a man. He's definitely not like this. And so it was kind of weird how it was in the dream. And then what was weird is I ended up getting picked up by someone to take me home anyway. And it makes even less sense because so the carpool idea never even worked because where this guy lives, it would be further away than where I'm at anyway. So then someone from my area still ended up having to pick me up from his house, which totally defeated the whole point of that. And then I had purchased something at GameStop that I was going to pick up. But then when I checked on the map, the closest one was pretty far because recently a lot of GameStops have closed. So yeah, I don't remember exactly what I was purchasing. And then I think the ending of the dream was us talking in the car with some people that I actually know from my area. So it was kind of a weird dream. I don't know if there's too much to glean from it other than maybe I kind of wish it was kind of now that I'm thinking about it, it's piecing together that idea of micro communities where, it I feel like we don't want to do favors for strangers or people at our jobs because they are strange. There's all these weird like well, there's your workforce, your friends at work, and then there's your neighborhood friends, and then there's your actual friend. Like there's too many layers of friends. We should just have all those layers in unison. Your actual friends should be who you live around, and then yeah, I think you get what I'm saying. Now, I actually think to some extent this does occur with rich people because a lot of times rich people do have, especially in modern society, a pretty strong unifying thing that they all are, which is, they're all rich. So if there's a certain desirable area, I kind of just think of California. There's obviously I'm not really sure of all the terminology, but these really rich mansiony kind of areas where a lot of wealthy people probably own homes there. And yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. And then, so there is almost a sense of community where I think rich people kind of get to taste this or would be able to execute this. Because obviously, once you're rich, you can move wherever you want. Nobody would really bat an eye at anything. If you wanted to move closer to where your friends are, you could just go and do it. There's nobody would even. But the problem is that's not accessible for most people. Obviously, most people they just never have enough money to even do that. they can't move to a more optimal place, and this is part of the problem, right? Like part of the problem is that I should, if I think if the system was optimally set up, even now, I shouldn't have to be living with parents. I just shouldn't have to do that. The economic system should be set up to where, well, it's more optimal for me to live in the city that I work, so I should just move there. And that's just how it should, because what else would make more or less sense? You know what I mean? And then people, because there's probably people that live in the city that I work, and they might not even work there. They might be driving the same as me. They might be having a 30 or 40, 50-minute commute. And then so they're taking up space in that area, and they're not they're not even working there anyway. Like, so it should be the case where society needs to be set up to where we can move, but only if it's optimal. Because then you get into how wasteful moving can be. You really don't want to move. And in a way, the ability to move, I believe, has caused a lot of these problems, because over the course of the past, when I say 100 years, a lot of humans have ended up moving, and it causes a significant amount of problems. A lot of humans have ended up moving. And that's part of the hyper individuality that's occurred. And, there's all kinds of things I can get into about that, because you really want to avoid moving if you don't have to. You would really, people moving is not, it should be one move done in unison with multiple people to try to generate these micro communities like I referenced in last episode. And then that should be it. Then you should all be staying put. I think so many people in their head, and I've heard these conversations before where they just get so romanticizing about moving and moving to someplace better or something. It's something I've heard so many people I know talk about, how where they live, it's terrible, and they want to move here for this reason or that. And I don't really think it's good to think that way, because, again, like I said, the main thing is your community. Like, if you're going to move, it should not just, because I don't know. I guess it's a mixture of it not really being fair and it just being more chaos. Like, I think that even if you lived in somewhat bad of an area, if everyone in that area you were friends with and you had close bonds, and then you moved to a wealthier, nicer area with nicer homes, I don't think that would really make you feel better. I think you would just miss your friends. Obviously, if the area was really bad, that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about, if you go from a poor area, but, things are fine. It's not like crime is crazy or anything. And a lot of people, you're known. And then you switch to a nicer area. I mean, it may be materially better, but I think you're going to miss your friends. And maybe to some people it wouldn't really matter, because to a lot of people nowadays they're just kind of conditioned to be apathetic and, oh, well, I knew those people in that neighborhood. I'm just going to go to this neighborhood now. I feel like people are conditioned to be that way. So I guess a lot of people wouldn't notice, but Yeah, I mean, in this case, it's I'm trying to talk about what would be ideal for a human. Although I don't know if physical location is really as annoying as just the going through the school system and just going through life and jobs and all these things. I think that is kind of the more significant problem. I think it is. Because most people don't move a lot. But see, and then some people do, though. And you usually move because of your job, and that's like this whole trope that happens. When you're in school, your parents find different work, find better work elsewhere, and then you move and uproot everything. That's kind of where it's something that I think is actually a bigger problem than people really pay attention to or make it out to be. That's what's interesting about it. Because you think about it, in the way most people interpret that is they think it's just fine. Let's say somebody has a good life somewhere, but then they have an opportunity to make even more money. So then they move to a different state or something. Sorry, I just had a flashback about a friend. We were never on bad terms. I guess we just drifted apart, sadly, but that's just what that pause was about. It wasn't anger, negativity, or anything like that. It was just reminding me of somebody I used to know that's long gone. But I guess it's correlated to this conversation. The idea of somebody moving away. And I think in life this has happened to me, and it's interesting how much it's kind of twisted my head. In second grade, there was a guy I was very close friends with, and yeah, I mean we were really good friends. I can still remember and think about him. I don't think about him too often, as it was just second grade, but I think every so often the friendship crosses my mind. And we started the school year, but I'm pretty sure it might have been the end of October or something. He was gone. For some reason, he had to move. I don't really know why. I'm not really sure where he was going, and it was weird. I mean, the goodbye was, I mean, maybe he was upset about it too, but it just seemed like, and at that age, you don't really have any way to say, like, oh, well, here's how we can keep into, we didn't have phones or anything, and I just don't think we really knew what to do. So it was kind of quiet, because I liked that guy a lot. And then he was just gone, and then that was it. And I remember at the time, feeling pretty affected by that. I wasn't able to just get over it immediately. And even back then in second grade, I still felt some kind of a weight about the situation. There was a heft to what had just occurred. It wasn't just something that was sad. It was something that was more foundational than that. And I think expanding on that, it kind of, those feelings overall as time went on, I think ended up morphing into what became my social anxiety. Because as I got older, starting around second grade, that's really when I started to just get hesitation about things. And I wonder what was going on. I mean, a part of it was my mind maturing. And as I was getting to in the beginning of the episode, I think that there's actually a good amount of evidence for that. That as I've gotten older, as I've gotten older, it's been more and more difficult to just chill, to just zone out. I oftentimes feel like I can't procrastinate, and it's difficult just to take a break. But I almost wonder if these types of modern social environments was really the beginning of what caused my social anxiety, going through these kinds of situations. Because that was probably the first time in my life that I even experienced that type of an event. I mean, up until then, I guess, my preschool, which I still do have memory of, by the way. I think a lot of people probably don't, but I still remember my preschool and experience and some things about it. The people there are a little bit more vague. I guess I don't really remember people all that specifically. But I didn't really have any jarring experiences like that. And I think coupled with the fact that I was getting older, its impact had more weight to it. But I think about, when I was younger, I was very extroverted. I didn't have any kind of shyness, really. I just didn't. I was pretty extroverted, and again, around the time, I want to say second, third, and fourth grade, and then really as it got later, it just kept getting worse. The shyness or the anxiety to say things started to become a larger and larger influence over what I would say. And just doing certain things became more and more difficult. And I always remembered I would remember people pretty fondly. And even though they probably didn't even think of me too much, they I remembered other people, and I think it always was kind of jarring thinking about who would be in my class the next year. It was always something that I thought about. And I remember in ninth grade, especially, well, I know that's fast forwarding, but this is just when I remember I was really hoping that I would get some classes with people I had already known, and I just didn't. And it was just, it was sad. And I feel like there's certain people who I could have been friends with who I wasn't able to be just because of all that was in my head. But it's just too, it was too much. It was too much for me to have to deal with all these new people. Like ninth grade, it was like everybody I had known and been exposed to was just gone. I lost everything. And it was just a bunch of classes with a bunch of people who I didn't know. And it just became too draining for me. So I guess that year, though, because of that, was really when I was 14. It's really what began my deep inner seeking of things. You know, it kind of started that. And that's one of the things I talk about where, you know, if I hadn't had gone through what I went through, there would have been no reason for me to think deeper or look deeper into things, you know? It only happened as a result of what I had dealt with and what I had went through. So if I hadn't had gone through those things, I probably just would have been a pretty happy person. But I think it's important to reflect on that time in my life because it wasn't good. It was pretty bad. I was very unhappy for a pretty long stretch of time. And things really did feel terrible or just not making any sense. They did. But it's what led me to what I was led to, which I think was important at the time. Now, eventually, I just started forcing myself to do stuff anyway. I tried forcing social connections, but didn't have too much success there either. And I still can't really say that I have the friends or connections that I want. I guess it's difficult to know if I ever will, but I guess I've been more optimistic about that as time has gone on. I just think that the types of people I like to talk to, they're few and far in between, but that doesn't mean they're none and far in between. You know, you know what I'm saying? I found some people here and there over time. I've found some people here and there. So I try to keep my head up a little more these days, and it's easier to because my routine is much better. You know, I'm working, I'm kind of doing what I'm supposed to do, or at least substantially closer to what I'm supposed to be doing than what I was doing before, which was, you know, just nothing. Basically just nothing. It's really weird. It's a shame. I don't know. I wish I had done more podcast content or things like that from back then. I should probably listen to some of my older podcasts. I think that would probably be a good idea because I do have some. They're on my channel. It's kind of random. It's not. They were kind of random, but I did have some. But I think it would be kind of weird. Like it's one of those things to listen to. It might just be jarring, just because I don't know. Just the way I was back then, I feel like now I'm just different. But yeah, I guess the main reflection is maybe I forget sometimes really just about what I've been through, especially during my teenage years, how difficult school was for me and how most of it was systemic issues. I don't think it was me doing anything wrong. It was me being a bad fit for the current system. A bad fit for the current. I think that's a good way to put it because I think if I had been in a smaller school, things would have been different. If I would have, there's a lot of things that I think affected my psychology that I didn't know I was dealing with at the time. I can only now understand what was going on, but people don't. People don't know about these things. People can't explain why what happens. People just don't know. I mean, ultimately, I'm not sure how much I know either because I've had thoughts about things like this for a long time. And even just in the past year, some things have changed. So even as I become an adult, I'm probably not going to hold the exact same perspectives as I held now. But I think what's interesting about that is hopefully I'll be able to become the adult that I thought adults were supposed to be, if that makes any sense. Because there was always this idea in my head as a child of who I thought adults were and what I thought they were supposed to do and what I thought they were supposed to know. And maybe at the very least, even if I can't change every system or revolutionize anything, maybe I will at least be able to become who I wanted to see in the world when I was a kid and be able to positively impact things based on what I know. It's interesting to think about things that way. And the problem is my mind always thinks so big. It really does. It thinks that, you know, everything has to be big and that's how I'd like to be. But ultimately, maybe that's all. About, you know, who am I becoming? What kind of a role am I playing in all this? I'm becoming an adult now. I mean, I'm legally an adult, but I think that really that definition in terms of where you're at maturity wise is not always the same for everybody, you know. So I don't know. Car rides with Shala. But I guess with some caution with that is I don't want to downplay what I would like to do. I really would like to have some kind of an impact on a larger scale. And hopefully that is going to be a part of my life. But it's not. It's hard to say what's really going to, you know, it's difficult to say. Well, if all that I got to say, all that I have to say is that it's been schla and now it's time to buy schla. So, see you schla.